Hello, this is Patrick Eade at BFBS. Hope you've had a decent 7 days. Welcome to Forces Life. And on the show this week, the poignant memories of a Falklands veteran who, as a young Scots Guardsman, fought an incredible fight alongside his comrades on Mount Tumbledown 30 years ago, and how he's come to terms with that conflict. And on the 30th anniversary of the famous Operation Black Buck RAF bomber raid on the occupied Falklands, we hear just how complex a raid it was. But we start with Bob Paxman, the founder of Talking to Minds. Last week on the programme, Bob spoke about his mental health charity made up of volunteer veterans, which relies on talking, listening and counselling over a cuppa and getting to the root cause of the problem, but without revisiting the trauma. Bob himself suffered many years in hostile environments with the Special Forces.
Basically, my symptoms of PTSD crept up on me over a number of years. About 9.5 years ago, it was brought to my attention that my behaviours were completely inappropriate for the civilian environment. I was running strategies that were perfect for hostile environments, for the way that I was wired up previously while serving in the military, and for how I was wired up for working in the civilian security industry. Doesn't work in Tesco's, doesn't work in a taxi, does not work in a pub, does not work when you're out shopping. So I looked into myself and made an appraisal, contrasted and compared my behaviours against other people's. At that point, I realised that there was something significantly wrong with the fact that I'd been suffering from nightmares for many, many years, that I'd been suffering from flashbacks that had been getting stronger and stronger over a period of time, and it was time for me then to turn around and throw myself at the hands of the NHS and say, help. After a period of time, I ended up going through a series of larger organisations that have been the specialists with working with severe stress-related conditions and PTSD. So I was given respite care for couple of weeks, diagnosed with complex PTSD and told to basically shut up and take the medication. At that point, that's where my training, that's where a lot of things that I've learned along the way kicked in, and I wouldn't believe what they said. I wanted to prove that wrong. So I looked outside of the medical model, I looked at other approaches, and very quickly came across a series of other approaches from which we have taken parts from an amalgam of different approaches, put them together into what we have now, which has been developed over a series of about 6-7 years, into what we have that actually gets people fixed. It changes the way that people think. People change the way that they think after having been on the course. So we're enlightening people, we're getting them included in what we're doing, we're involving them in what we're doing, and we're involving them in a veterans helping veterans process, because there's nothing better than to have somebody sat in front of you who is a testimony, metaphorically, that they have been in your shoes. To walk a mile in somebody's shoes is a big thing. And when you can show somebody the light at the end of the tunnel, it's much easier to get somebody to pull their problem inside out as you walk them through the steps of what we do to get them out the other side, where they start to think positively about their life and their integration into society.
And as word gets out about Talking to Minds, you were telling me that, in fact, you've had bereaved families come to see you as well, who need to chat and perhaps download because other members of the family just can't really help in any positive way, and they're getting no comfort, and the old adage, time's a great healer, has not applied in their case.
The time can be a great healer if you're having a cathartic experience around it. Time can just keep you where you are if you're not. So what we're doing is we're taking clients, and this is both with the bereavement aspect of things, and those that are suffering from severe stress-related conditions. We're enabling them to have their own cathartic experience, their own penny-dropping moment at the unconscious level, which allows them to leave that baggage in the past so that it disappears, so that they can move on and actually experience positivity in their lives.
More from Bob at Talking to Minds after this from Stoosh. The founder of Talking to Minds, the charity established with the sole purpose of helping those suffering from post-traumatic stress disorder. One of the biggest challenges for Bob and his team is financial. Fundraising is an ongoing task. And Bob's delighted that author Alex James has also offered to help.
Alex James, she's written a trilogy of books, which a percentage of the profits from the book come to support the charity. And that can be found on the Alex James website. And they're basically about a war photographer who gets herself into trouble in Afghanistan, and fortunately there's a covert SAS team in the background that all of a sudden materialise and save her bacon, basically.
And what about the future? I mean, how is your work being viewed outside the UK? Because I guess in most cases, a lot of this pioneering work comes from the UK and the US. But because of international operations over the last 10 years in Iraq and Afghanistan, there are other countries too that must also be facing the issue of PTSD. And many of those countries who've sort of signed up to ops, as it were, have never really experienced this thing before. I mean, I know that New Zealand and Australia have been there, and perhaps we haven't known about it, but European countries that haven't been involved in this extreme violence that has taken place in Iraq and Afghanistan in recent years. I mean, are you getting phone calls from overseas to say, Bob, you know, what should we be doing about this?
Absolutely. We're engaging with several countries at the moment. In the States, in Australia and New Zealand, they're taking post-traumatic stress very seriously. It's not just a case of talking about it. They're actually actively looking for new approaches that are evidence-based, such as ours, to help their people, because they've got a duty of care. Sometimes it strikes me in the UK that there seems to be a lot of talk around throwing money at things. We've been around for 4.5 years. The systems out there know that we're in place. Things will change as we get validation through the British Psychological Society, through the National Institute of Clinical Excellence. We start moving things forward. But our testimonies from our clients speak for themselves. And other countries are now starting to engage with us because of the fact that they're seeing the positive results that we're getting. Plus, we have an evidence base, an academic paper that proves what we do. So we've been struggling with funding. We're totally funded by the members and by generous donations from the public. Everything's going back into helping the guys. You know, my wage is £7,400 a year. I struggle to survive. I work 7 days a week. I work all year. We've got 40 volunteers. We're in a position where we need to be treating more than 150 people a year. We need to be treating 1,500 people a year. We have the mechanism there. We have the internal structure there. We have the documentation. We've got everything in place. Now we need funding. We need people to step forward and say, I'll take a punt on this, because they're actually doing what they say on the tin. Now, that is going to help us help many, many more people. We need now to be investing in training more of our people to work under our umbrella, to move this forward. We don't need bricks and mortar. We can run this course anywhere. What we do need is therapists that are working full-time, as opposed to coming in between jobs to help us help others. We need to be expanding this right now.
And the website's there, plenty of information about it, and you would point people in that direction. And I guess in closing, Bob, say, if you think you have a problem, then do step forward, because as you said earlier, you know, when you were shouting in taxis and Tesco's, you didn't do that for fun and didn't presumably bat an eyelid.
Absolute self-preservation. I believe that I was in a constant hostile environment, and I perceived pretty much everybody, including my partner, as the enemy, and that wasn't acceptable.
And so step forward, and the web address is?
Talking to Minds, and that's talking, number 2, minds.co.uk.